So for day 4 of my 7 Days of Halloween series, today I am collaborating with a friend of mine called Linda Simpson, who a while ago we both bought a pack of these etc. tags from Stampers Anonymous and Tim Holtz, and we both took one of the medium tags each. Now, if you're not sure what these are, they're kind of they're paper but very, very thick tags. These are small. This is one of the small ones, so you can imagine that the medium-sized one, which I'll show you in a second, is a lot bigger. So we bought this pack of 2 between us, and then we each took one and we challenged each other to create a Halloween themed tag using this as the base, or the larger one as the base. So I immediately cut mine down into a coffin shape. So as you can see, this tag is very, very big. Now then, let's see inches wise whether I can work out exactly what it is. See, so it's about 12 inches. So, and from point to point, you're looking at just over, well, actually just under 7. Does it actually say the dimensions on the paper? No, it doesn't. I would have thought that it would actually have the dimensions on there somewhere, but it don't. So there you go. Anyway, so they also come with reinforcing rings. Big reinforcing rings. So this is going to be the base for my mixed media tag that I'm going to create today. Slightly bigger than the usual size tags that I work on, which are, you know, about 4 inches by whatever. So what I want to do is I want to use one of my laser cut sets. So this is the Halloween 2 laser cut set, and I'll bring in all the pieces from the set here because I've got one open, and there's quite a bit that you get in this set, and I'm going to attempt to try and use everything. So first of all, there's a Gothic frame, and then you've got the centerpiece as well that fits into that middle, but I probably won't be using that. So that's going to play a part inside my tag. There's obviously a big skull. There's also a very large bat that's going to go onto the tag as well. We have 2 separate bat wings that you can position in whatever position you want to, he says. You can lay the skull over the top to create a kind of crest. Now we also have 3 of the Gothic circle, but you've also got the inners to them also. And I'm going to put a little bit, I've used those Gothic clovers as being a little bit of a decoration towards the bottom, but you also get 3 small bats too. Now these are about 3 millimeters deep. So I think when put together and painted and highlighted, that's going to make a real nice tag. I also want to include somewhere one of these little metal label things from Tim Holtz. Now what does he call them? If I can remember, these are the word bands. So, and I've got bone collector because I've obviously got skull on there as well, which I want to incorporate and add probably towards the bottom here. Now I've got some small pieces of MDF. Now these are just offcuts that came, that pops out of bits like when they come out of the other pieces. And I keep these because they're also very useful if you want to add something that's going to give it a bit of stability underneath. Then it's not going to drop down or anything like that. So the first thing I want to do today is I want to add some texture, but I also want to add some string wrapped all the way around the tag before I paint it. So that's going to be my first task. So I'm going to tidy everything away here, put it all to one side, and then I'm going to make a start on wrapping the tag with that string. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the end of my ball of string and I have my my glue pen, which is a hot glue gun, but it's cordless, as you can see, and this is made by Bosch. I know there was a few questions yesterday about the glue pen and where I got it from or what it was called and all that kind of stuff. So there you go. Now you know. So I've just added a little bit of that hot glue gun and embedded the string into there just to hold it. And I'm just going to leave that to dry for a second or two for it to cool down. And then I can start to wrap the string around the tag. And I want to do it in kind of random ways, but that's, come on, and then we can bring that back in over here, and then I can cut the string. That can be put to one side, and then I can add another blob of glue and embed that in the back, which is going to hold it. But what I can also do on the back is just add a little bit of glue under there, just so that those pieces will stay in place too, and then just let that solidify for a second or two. And then so I'll hold that for 1 or 2 minutes, maybe add a few more, just going around just to make sure that it is going to stay where it's supposed to, and I'll be right back. Okay, so my string is now secured in place on the back. I want to add in some texture, so I have some modelling paste. This was purchased from Indigo Blue. This is a fine one. They also do a coarse version, which is really grainy, but I also want to add in some brick texture, so I'm going to use my Tim Holtz collection layering stencil just to add in some brick texture into the background. I'm going to be very, very careful and quite frugal with this, because I don't particularly want a lot of it, but I just want to add in some of that texture. And because I've got the string down, now you may be saying, why didn't I add the texture before the string? Well, mainly because I'm not particularly all that bothered about having it super prominent. I don't want it to be I don't want it to stand out too much. I want it to be there, but I don't want it to stand out too much. It only wants to be kind of like a hint into the background. Just to add a little bit of interest into the background of the tag. So I now need to get that dry. So I'm going to just blast that with the heat gun, and then I'm going to be right back with it. So now that my texture paste is dry, I'm going to add on the reinforcing ring up at the top. I'm going to use the glue gun again. I know some of you will be wondering why I'm using a glue gun and maybe not just using ordinary glue, or whether I'm not using gel medium or anything else of that nature. Well, the truth is it doesn't matter. They all work equally as good as each other. Now, I know that when this gets hot again, the glue gun can move, it can remelt, but I don't intend for this to get hot again, apart from when I'm going to be drying a little bit of the paint, but that's not going to really affect anything to the extent where it's going to fall to pieces. I could have used PVA, I could have used gel medium, matte medium, whatever, heavy gel medium, it really doesn't make any difference. It's what you prefer to use. And in my instance, this is easy because I can use it like a pen, I can do precision, and also it doesn't go off. You know, I've got extra glue sticks ready on hand, and if I leave it on a brush, it isn't going to, you know, it isn't going to ruin the brush. So that's the only other reason. So I'm now going to start to build up and add in my other bits and pieces onto the tag now. So this is the big bat. So I'm going to put a big glob of glue underneath. So you can see one of the other reasons why I wanted to use the glue gun is so I can actually put some pressure down on it, and it's going to hold everything where I want it to hold. So big blob there, big blob there, big blob there, and then I can drop that right where I want it and push down, and that's then pretty much going to hold exactly where I want it to be. Exactly where I want it to be. Okay, so the next bit is going to be the frame. So before I stick this one down, I just want to make sure I've got the right kind of positioning for it. And I'm going to add in, let's just see, I've got bat up there, I put bat up there, and then we had a couple of those Gothic circles. Necessity is going to mean that I'm not going to get this as symmetrical as I perhaps once thought, and then I can probably stick those to the back of the wings so that wherever I position them they're going to work. So what we'll do is I will just bring that down maybe slightly more to there, and then we'll get these two little bats stuck down first of all. There we go. Excuse the head if it comes into shot. And then we can just add little bits on the clover. And I'm not particularly bothered either about these strings today, because they do look a little bit like spiders' webs and they're down there anyway. So the next one, we'll put a blob there, a blob there, blob there. Try and get it centered. Okay, so everything's pretty much going according to plan. Almost. I may have to adjust and add a little bit more glue, but that's okay. So the other thing I want to do is just to add a little circle of that MDF underneath, just to create that stable piece. I'll do the same thing on this one. One of the reasons why I love working with the MDF is because you're able to do a lot with it. It's quite effective, and that skull then can sit on there, just like that. I'll need to add a small one just underneath that skull piece there, just to add that riser piece. Just like that. It's going to give us some real depth and dimension. But before I stick that one on, I want to get this first layer painted. So I want to get all the base layer pieces on first before sticking everything else on. So the other pieces that I wanted, so I want another bat to go down here, like so. I could theoretically put that up there as well. What do we think? That's going to go on there on the wings, and then I can add the 3 Gothic clover pieces down here at the bottom. And that's going to give us plenty of place for that to go when we add that piece onto it as well. I think that's what we're going to do. So let's just add a bat onto there. And then we can add the other pieces like so. And the final bit just in the middle. Oh, near enough. Yeah, that'll do. Excellent. So all those base pieces are now stuck down. So I now want to give this a coat of black gesso, and I'll also paint these at the same time so that when we glue them on, all these parts underneath I've got easy access to. So I'll just go and grab my black gesso. So I'm going to be using the Dina Wakley black gesso, which was what I used on the rusted skull yesterday, or for day 3. It's a really, really good black gesso, and I found that I didn't need to do a second coat once I'd used it. So what I'm going to do now is literally paint everything with the black gesso to give it that real nice base coat, so that I can start then to add in highlights of other colours. Now of course this is going to take quite some time. It's going to be very, very boring and repetitive for you guys sat at home watching this, literally watching paint dry. So I will, as per usual, show you a little bit, and then I will jump to the end where it's painted and I'm about to do the paint on the other pieces that I want to stick over the top. Okay, so that's the last of the extra pieces, all painted with black gesso. That's the entire first coat of the tag. Now let me see whether, I don't know whether that's actually in focus or whether it's just the lighting or the fact that it's black. Yeah, I think so. I think it's just the fact that it's black. So that's all had its first coat. So I'm now going to leave that to dry naturally, because for me it's 12:30 on Saturday afternoon and my tummy is rumbling. So I'm going to go make myself some lunch, give this a chance to dry naturally, and then I'll be right back after I've had a sandwich. Now that my tummy is full and everything is dry, it's time to stick down the elements onto the tag. So my glue gun is now back up to temperature. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue on there. And I think I'm probably in need of a new glue stick. So we need to make sure that we're getting this just right. I think that's just about right at that side. Splodge there, and actually let's add it onto the frame, that way we know we're going to get it right. That should do us. If I get any of the glue on here, that's fine, because I can pull it off when it's dry. And then we can just add the skull on into the position that we want it, which I think is going to be just about right on there. And then we can add on each of the wings and drop it right into position. Get rid of those strings. That one might be a little bit higher, but that's okay. Liking it so far. So now everything's stuck down, everything's in place, it's time to start introducing some colour. So I need to make some spritzers from some metallic paints. So I will go and grab my spritz bottles and I'll be right back. So the first spritzer that I'm going to make, I have a Ranger Mister bottle, a brand new one. I have some indigo blue Raven Black metallic paint. So this is kind of like a, well, Raven Black, like it says on the label, but it's not Raven Black. It's more of a kind of a hematite kind of colour, almost a dark grey metallic paint. Now, I'm not going to need a lot because this stuff goes a long way. So just using a spatula, I've added some in to that bottle, and I have some water that I'm also going to add into the bottle, and I think that probably will be enough, but just add a little bit more just to be on the safe side. So in it goes. This is a very, very inexpensive way to make your own metallic spritzers. And then give it a shake, which that's going to mix up the metallic spray into the water, which will then allow you to be able to then start spritzing and adding a little bit of that fantastic colour into the project. Now I want it to cover and get into all those little nooks and crannies that we might not have just been able to get into with that black gesso. So we're also going to let it run and create a nice kind of sheen with that metallic. And it should collect on the lower edges. He says drop in the tag. Okay, so that's going to be our first base coat. Of course, I'm going to give it a little bit of a helping hand with the heat gun. And if I spot some areas that I think could do with a little bit more, I'm just going to add it while I'm drying. And as it dries, you'll start to see that beautiful kind of silvery shimmer come through. As you can see, it's already started around the edges on the skull and a little bit on the wings. So I'll continue to dry this, and then I'll be back as soon as I've got every last little bit dry. So that's now all dry, and you can see the shimmer and the shine that's come through from that sprit. Obviously there are some areas where it isn't quite as shiny, but that's fine, that's just the nature of the beast. And you can see now how that texture in that brickwork has started to come forward with that shimmer in the background. So I've zoomed out just a little bit so you can see the full length of the tag now. So what I want to do next is one of my most favorite things. It's dry brushing on the metallic paint. So I have this copper paint, the Indigo Blue Miss Moneypenny metallic, and I've just shook it up a little bit, and I'm just going to take a little bit from the lid, and I'm now going to start pulling out a little bit of that texture from the brick. So just the raised areas on the brick. Try not to get any in the what do they call it, the mortar. So just the raised areas. I'm just wanting a hint of that colour to come through. Tiny amount. Okay, it's fine to turn your project round just so you can reach better, or better see what you're trying to achieve. And again, it's one of those things that does take a little bit of time, but is worth it if you just take your time and go really slowly. You know, you will reap the benefits for doing it. It's a patience thing, dry brushing. You can pull out as much of that texture as you want. So that now looks a little bit more like authentic brickwork, but it can look exactly how you want it to. It doesn't have to be. You know, you could have gone silver, you could have gone gold. I've brought copper in because of the red tones, and I wanted it to look a little bit more like red brick, so that's why I've brought in the copper, more terracotta-y, kind of fired brickish. That kind of looks now like the plaster's falling off the bricks. So I'm happy with that. So very little actually needed to be done on that. So I'm now going to start bringing in some other colours, and I have the Ruby Slippers, which is red metallic paint. And again, I'm just going to very sparingly. And yes, I haven't cleaned the brush. I've allowed the copper paint to still to mix with that red. So I'm going to just pick out some bits, just start highlighting different aspects, just to get a little bit of colour into the project. I'm going to maintain and keep the metallic. I'm going to build up just the reds. And I'm adding the red in first because if I find that I've gone a bit too heavy with it, then I can always cover it with other colours later. So if I don't like it, I can go back on with the raven, I can go back in with any other colours that I want to. We start to build the colour. Just do it gradually and slowly. Well, sorry, I was off camera there. Just start catching the edges. All good stuff. And again, you can always go back in later, add more, take more out. If you want it to be deeper, add more. And then just adjust it how you want. Play with the colour. Of course, red isn't going to be the only colour that I'm introducing. I'm going to also introduce some green into this, and probably when it's all done I'll add in some gold. It's all about just adding that hint of colour, and I know these are flat pieces, these MDF pieces are flat, and that's why it's okay to add the colour in to kind of bring out the shape and highlight the shapes. Try not to get too much on the skull for now. So I'm going to wash that brush off. I think I'm going to see if I can bring in a metallic white for the skull. So let me see if I can find that. I have one called Snow White somewhere. Oh, that's Vodka Martini, that's silver. So where's my Snow White? Frosty Sky, no. Snow White. He's rattling around in his drawers. Pantry White. Snow White. There we go. So this is a metallic white paint. So I will need a fresh brush for this because I don't want to contaminate that red. So let's see what we got. What do we got? What do we got? Yes, that'll do. So I'll just bring a little bit of that Snow White in. Then I'm going to gently just bringing around the edges. And you can see how it started to stand out on the edges of the skull. It's a really nice kind of shimmer. A little bit more. This works better than the silver, I think. So catching those edges with the white, blend out where we've caught the red. Highlight more right on those edges. Try and catch the eyes. Yeah. Looking good. So while I've got that, I can then just add in a little bit of that white up there. Maybe introduce a tiny bit elsewhere, just so it's not on its own. Maybe catch the string. So it just picks it out into that background. Very little at a time. You can always add it, and if you manage to catch it where you don't want it, then you can always just touch up with that raven black later. But just to highlight some of those bits, just tone everything in together. Some bits of string up there. The thing with this paint is it does dry quickly when you have it on your craft mat. So you do sometimes have to work pretty quickly. And keep replenishing as and when. Looking good. Just going to add a little bit of white just on the top of those wings. Just introduce a little bit, just as a tiny little highlight. And also just in a couple of areas. Just very subtle. Just adding a little bit of that mica, a little bit of that shine. Just makes it almost look like it's the moonlight that's picking out the highlights. Okay, so I also just want to add in a little bit of Halloween green. So for that we have the Emerald City. This is Emerald City Metallic, again from Indigo Blue, and I'm just going to very, 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 very lightly just introduce a little bit of that colour. It's literally just over where I've added some of the white, because it makes it stand out. Because we've added the white first, it acts as kind of a base to make the colour stand just that little bit brighter. And you see, you can actually, although there's hardly any of that green on there, it does stand out a little bit more because of the white. Because it's acrylic and the red is dry, you aren't going to get any mix. What's green will stay green. Slime green, moss green, lichen green, all great colours for Halloween. And then just in that top right hand corner, sorry, left hand corner, I'm going to get some of that green paint, and then just gently just brush a tiny bit, not too much. Still want to maintain the silver, but I want to kind of just catch a little bit of the green in the bottom right and that top left. So we maintain that white across the middle. I'm just going to add just some tiny touches of green into that brickwork, just so it looks a little bit like moss and lichen growing in the bricks. But it ties it all together. Okay, so I'm happy with the way that looks. I just want to make sure it's all nice and dry. I'm going to clean away all this and I'll be right back once everything's dried off. Okay, so everything's nice and dry now, and of course some of you will be wondering whether or not I'm going to add any white splatters. Yes, I am. So I'm going to use that Snow White paint. I'm just going to add a little glob onto my craft mat, add some water to it. And then grab a brush, mix up that white metallic paint. Mine's quite old now, so it might just take a little bit longer just to mix in to a nice milky kind of consistency. But there's plenty of it, as you can see. That should do. And then I'm just going to my hand's there to stop it from splattering out the way across my desk, in case you were wondering. And that, I think, is going to do it. Just pull this big, huge string of wet wipes out of the packet. So, quick tidy up, a quick dry, a quick wipe down, and then I'll grab the heat gun. That's how to do it when you can't be bothered to pull a sheet off. And I'll be right back. So while the tag's finishing drying, we have to add our bone collector metal label from Tim Holtz. Now I'm going to tie it with string so that it fits in with the rest of it, but obviously the string's now a different colour to the string that's on the tag, but that can be quickly and easily remedied. So this again is that Raven Black paint. So all I'm going to do is just literally go over the string. Just turn it over. And this is then going to fit in more, or be more in keeping once we add it to the project. And then we'll just turn it over, and then if I get any on the actual label itself, we're just able to wipe it off. Of course, with it being acrylic paint, it won't take long for that paint to dry once we apply a little bit of heat. Our string's all dry now, so I've got my glue gun. So what I can do is I can now add a bead of glue to the back of that label, turn it over and drop it exactly where I want it to be, and then leave that to set for a few seconds. Let it cool down, and once it's grabbed and it's in place, we can pretty much flip it over and then either tie it like so. Trim off the excess first. Because I think it's probably going to be a lot easier just to glue it in position. So that's not going to move anywhere, that's not going to go anywhere now. So just to make sure, I'm going to just nip it. Big blob of glue, and then just pull and push at the same time into that glue. And that should theoretically hold everything into place. And I can also just trim off the excess there at the same time. We can just adjust it if we need to. That was a quick text from Ian, who's out at a steampunk show at the moment, just letting me know how he's getting on. Strangely enough, actually, he's in Whitby, which is perfect with its connections to Dracula. And there you go, that's it. There's my tag. I do have in my collection some Halloween spider's web kind of fabric that I can twist. It's also got copper on it, which is perfect. Loop it through, as the fibres for the tag as a finishing touch. So I hope you enjoyed watching me create this tag for our little collaboration. So don't forget, Linda has created her tag as well. And if you want to see what she's done with the sister of this tag, then all you have to do is to pop across to her YouTube channel, which I'll put a link in the description below, so you can check out what Linda did with hers as part of this Spooks Are Us collaboration for Halloween. So that's all from me. I will see you all again tomorrow for day 5. Bye for now.
Ha 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 ha!